Welcome everyone. This is Dungeon Jedi Masters. Today we're actually going to go through teach you how to build a monster using the Star Wars 5e system. I've been DMing this system for almost a year. Actually started in April. And one of the good and bad things of the system is it's a completely new homebrew system. But the hard thing is there's not always the monster you want or need for your encounter. Before this, I just played just traditional 5e, and usually you can either through using the monster manual or some of the expanded content, or even just looking at other people's homebrew monsters, find something that you could use to fit your campaign without too much work. But with this being a newer system, there's always an opportunity to kind of make your own monster. And I know for a lot of people, and myself included, before jumping into it, it can be a little intimidating because you're not sure exactly how to do it and what stats and what to give it and how to balance it out to your encounter. So this is definitely something that will be able to walk you through the steps of creating a monster, show you some of the resources you can use to make sure that your CR and the challenge rating is right for your party, and just really make sure it's an easy experience. It's not going to be too stressful. So the monster we're going to make today is not one that I'm using to submit to the monster manual for SW5E. It's one I'm going to be using for my own campaign. I've wanted to do an Ewok. The Ewoks I felt like kind of got a little underrated with Return of the Jedi, so I wanted to make a fun one that's kind of a badass Ewok. So today we're going to make an Ewok bounty hunter. I'm going to be using GM Binder. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on that one too. So this isn't going to be in-depth on GM Binder. I may do another video on that too. I'm not a master at it. I'm still a little bit of a novice myself, but I've kind of worked my way around getting used to making monsters, doing a little bit of formatting with the pictures and things. But I know that's definitely, from at least from what I've seen on the Discord for SW5E, that's always kind of a challenging step for people, and it definitely was for myself included. When you see the coding, even though there's not much coding to it, it looks like there's coding to it, so I definitely get when people get a little anxious about it. So we're gonna kind of dive right in. Before we actually go to make a monster, our monster, I'm gonna actually show you one that I made recently, just so you can kind of get a little feel of how it looks when it's finished, as well as just some of the thought you kind of put into it before you make it. So the one we're gonna take a look at is Kylo. So I made him the First Order Warlord. He's been one of my favorite ones I've made recently. He's my favorite part of the new trilogy, so he's one that I was happy to take a look at and make. So when making this one, you just got to kind of think of, especially when you're making a monster, one of the first things you want to do is what characteristics do you want him to have? How do you want him to interact with the party or the people he's coming up against? So Kylo, from what I remember from the movies, he's a little bit reckless. He's got that kind of rage and energy, that berserker type energy. So you'll see I've given him a couple of the berserkers type things. So you'll see with his damage resistance, I gave him that kinetic and energy resistance from unenhanced weapons. I kind of think when Chewie shot him in the Force Awakens, he was still up and running and still able to fight pretty well. So just kind of a couple things, and especially for the characters that have popped up in the movie that may not, or movie, comic book, books, whatever use from the character you want to convert over, and if it's a brand new character, just kind of think of the things they did. So he disarmed a couple people, so I gave him that disarming strike just to reflect that in the block. He's definitely a powerful force user, so I gave him some pretty powerful force using abilities. Couple ones I want to highlight out of there. I gave him Rage because again he's kind of a berserker. Dominate Mind because he tried to do that to Ray. Just a couple things that fit his character. There's a ton of force powers to choose from, so if you're converting somebody over, or even just making your own monster, make sure you look through those powers and really match them up to what you want to have for your opponent. Uh, Not gonna go through all these other things I really liked with this. See, I gave him Reckless too because he got his easy hammers down with his saber. He's not usually in the best form, but he's getting things done, as well as Relentless. Also gave him that unstable Kyber crystal, just to kind of reflect that. And this one was kind of a fun one, so allowed him to bypass resistances, as well as immunity to energy damage, and gave him kind of a higher crit area. So he can crit from 18 to 20 on the die. So just something that I would think would fit for him, just because he seems like he's going recklessly at it with that crystal, and if he does hit, he does some damage. So I thought that'd be kind of a fun way to reflect that. And since he's a pretty tough guy, I made him a legendary monster. The one we're doing today is not going to be legendary. It's going to be a tough one. He's going to be going up against a group of level 9 or 10. I haven't decided yet when they'll be fighting him. People, so he's going to be pretty tough, but he's not going to be a legendary creature. So we're actually going to dive in. So this is kind of your home screen for GM Binder. This is can see some of the monsters and things I've worked on before. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom, and basically, whenever you create a new monster, you just kind of put their title in here. So I'm going to put Ewok bounty hunter, since that's what my guy's gonna be. And just a little bit of flavor for this guy. So he's gonna pop up with the group. They've pissed off the Bounty Hunters Guild a little bit, so he's going to be one of the ones that are going to be coming after him sometime in the future. I haven't decided when he's popping up yet. So he's going to be an Ewok. He's still going to have that same small size and stature, but he's going to be a little bit of a monk blend. He's going to have a kind of an improvised vibro staff, which is going to have a droid head at the top that helps him translate things. But he's just gonna be kind of a cold-blooded killer, so he's gonna be an interesting one to kind of role play out for the group. One that I'm excited to bring out there. And the nice thing too is after we finish going through this, I'm going to put that link to this GM binder creation for the Ewok in the YouTube channel. So if you guys want to use them for your campaign, feel free. But this is just something I've wanted to do with Ewoks. I may do it with the Gungans too. Just some of those ones that got the short end of the stick in the movies. I want to kind of give a badass representation that you could use for your group and just kind of dispel that illusion. Especially with the Ewoks and Gungans, a lot of your group's not going to take them too seriously when they run into them, so it can give you some opportunity to really get the upper hand on your group. But my group's probably listening to this, so it may not be as much of a surprise when he finally shows up. So basically, whenever you open GM Binder, you're going to see this screen. So you'll see it gives you kind of that welcome. And this is actually, if your first time using it, take a look and read some of this information. It gives you some tips and tricks on how to use the system. We're not going to dive into that today. Today is more about building a monster. So what I usually do when I jump in is I hit Control All, delete that off, and you'll see two sides of the screen. So this is kind of where you hit your coding in. So this black screen is where you put the actual monster information in. The right side is where you'll see how it's going to look. So one thing we're actually going to do before we even jump into that. So let me pull that over. So one of the nice things too, and you can find this if you want to do something for the SW5E system, you can find this right on the Discord. But we're going to pull over the SW5E theme. So it kind of gives you that Star Wars look and makes everything uniform with that. And kind of makes it look a little less just like the traditional Dungeons and Dragons look, because you'll see with the right head size got that kind of grayish brown, which is perfect for traditional D&D, but this is Star Wars. We want to get kind of that new agey feel. So I'm gonna pull that up and get that in there. And I'm just trying to remember where I saved that last. So there we go. And then you can find this right on the Discord under new releases. If you use that search function, you can get it from right there. I've got it saved in another location just to make it a little easier for my life. But definitely they've got that out there, and you could use that for your campaigns and just kind of give that monster look, that Star Wars feel that you want for the block. So we've got that here. So I always enter a lot, drop it down there so it's not in my way. So this way, just gets it out of your way. You've got everything in there that you need without having to kind of mess around with it. It looks like I copied something else a little bit too with that. So let me undo that and then put that back in there. It definitely. So one of the things too I recommend, especially when you're first getting started doing homebrew, get somebody to take a look at your ideas. I always have post mine usually to the Discord if it's gonna be something that's gonna be used for the books, and people are always willing to give you feedback. Even me, if you want to reach out to me, I'm always on the Discord. You'll see I'm at Aeryn, so feel free to at me and ask me questions about your monster. I love looking at those. It's one of my favorite things to go over. So feel free to loop me in, but always have somebody take a look at it. There are things you'll miss, even if I do this frequently. There are things I'll either have typos or miss, and having somebody else take a look at it's always a great idea. So do that. And one thing I always recommend too is if there's a feature that you like on another monster and you want to bring it in, do that for this too. So definitely make sure you're kind of converting things over without having to reinvent the wheel. So now that we've got that in there, we're going to do the first bit. So for GM Binder, best way to do things, don't reinvent the wheel. Click on the snippets, and then you can see there's a whole bunch of different things you can pull over. But today we're going to pull over the monster block. And I've got a couple things I want to throw in there, so I'm going to do the monster block wide, which as you see is going to give you a little bit more room to put some more features and things in there. So we've got that pulled over. And you see that's over there, so it looks like a little weird. So it didn't pull over the. So let's do that again. Oh, that's what happened. So it actually pulled it over at the bottom because I forgot to move my mouse up. So let's copy and paste that, put that up there. Perfect. So now we've got that at the top. So we're going to change this first. So I was going to name him Ewok Bounty Hunter. I haven't decided on a name for my campaign yet. And for this, you can guys use whatever you like on that. This is an Ewok, so he's going to be small. He's going to be humanoid, so definitely if you're using SW5E, make sure to use kind of their formatting. So you put small, humanoid, parentheses, Ewok, and then you put the alignment. So with this guy, I think he's going to be chaotic balanced. Uh, he's going to be kind of doing his own thing, but he's not light, not dark. He's just kind of doing his job. So he's going to be a little bit balanced, but he's definitely going to be on the chaotic side. So now with this, the AC, we're going to kind of put this in a little bit later because we kind of figured this out before as we go through. I always like to kind of do hit points, AC, as well as the actual modifiers last because you want to kind of make sure what CR you're going to be close to. I'm going to be shooting for about a 10 or 11 with this guy, but we'll definitely kind of get closer to that as we get through. So this guy, as I said, I'm kind of imagining him as a type of monk creature, so I'm going to give him 50 feet speed. So I want him to be able to zip around the battlefield, really just be able to kind of move without too much restrictions. And, the party's going to try to lock him down, but I want him to be able to kind of get around and be able to do his own thing without having to worry about that too much. So we got to put that in there. So we're going to go through and put some of the stats in. So strength. He's going to be more of a monk build, but he's not going to be too weak. We can give him a 14 on that side. So let me put that in there. So 14 strength, which is going to be a +2. Dex is going to be his primary stats. So we're going to, let's do for right now 22. So I'm going up against, as a 6 level, 9 or 10 character, so I wanted to be able to do some damage. Uh, Constitution, he's going to be decently tough, so I mean, we're going to give him a, let's say we give him a 14. Intelligence, he's Ewok is not the brightest guy, so we're going to give him a 8, so it's going to be a -1 for his intelligence. Wisdom, though, since monk build, he's going to be pretty smart. He's going to be a bounty hunter used to tracking things, so we're going to give him some good wisdom. We're going to give him an 18 and +4. Charisma, he's not going to be the most charismatic, but not super uncharismatic, so we're just going to kind of give him base for that, so +0. Perfect. So now we've got that through. We're going to make his saving throws. He's going to be a monk, so I'm going to give him 3. So I'm going to give him Dex. And right now, since we don't know what his overall modifiers for the proficiency bonus are going to be, I'm just going to put plus nothing. I'm going to give him Dex, Wisdom. So actually, I'm going to give him Dex, Con, and Wisdom. So, and we'll go back and fill those in after we kind of figured out what his CR is going to be. So this guy, he's a bounty hunter. He's an Ewok, so he's got a lot of interesting things we got to think of for his skills. And one thing I always recommend doing, let's flip over to that page too. So this is the SW5E page for Ewoks. So let me kind of get that over a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. So this is the SW5E page for Ewoks. If you're ever making a monster that's going to have a specific species, check this out. This is going to have some good information that you can kind of use and pull in for your monster block. And we're going to be taking a couple pieces from this too. It also gives you a little bit of flavor text too. So just if you want to have some flavor for the monster you're creating, you can kind of borrow some from this too, or even steal some names. Uh, but this, things we're going to take a look at. So they get a couple of good features. So they get advantage on perception checks. We're going to put that in the block a little bit later, but definitely lets us know that perception is going to be one of ours that we're going to use. as well as nature and survival. So those are both going to be three that we're going to pull in for his skills. So let's go back into that block. So the skills I'm going to give him, so I'm giving him acrobatics, pretty nimble. So same thing, we're going to give it a +0 for right now, just because we don't know exactly what his modifiers are going to be. So I'm going to give him acrobatics. I'm also going to give him, and I like to do these in alphabetical order now too, just to make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to give him acrobatics. I think that would probably be good on that side. And then definitely the nature. And then perception for sure. He's going to be a bounty hunter. He's need to kind of be observant. And then also, I'm going to give him sleight of hand as well. And then survival. And I'm spelling bad, so perfect. And then we're gonna put those pluses in there. Oops. And then we're gonna go back a little later and fill those in once we know what their overall stats are gonna be. So no, he's an Ewok. There's nothing I think he'd be inherently damaged or vulnerable to with damage. So we're actually gonna take that out. So there's nothing in there. We don't actually need to put that and clutter up the block. Same thing with resistances. He's not gonna really have anything that he's super resistant to. And then same with immunities. One thing I am gonna give him though, since he's kind of a badass Ewok, I'm going to make him immune to the charmed and frightened conditions. And then with senses, we're going to put passive perception in there because I'm probably gonna give him expertise in perception, so he's definitely gonna have a good passive. One thing to check out for too, I don't believe Ewoks have it. They don't. So if you have somebody that has dark vision or true sight, tremor sense, any of those other type of visions, make sure that you take a look at that and include that in the block for the species, because you want to make sure that you're reflecting that in there. And this is the line where you do that at as a census. So if they had dark vision or anything unusual, you'd put that in there so that you or whoever's running this monster knows exactly what they can do. And so for this, we're gonna give him, I think it's just Ewok Ease. Yep, Ewok Ease. So kind of a funny name to go with it, but it's gonna be Ewok Ease. And that's going to be his rating. So right now, as I said, I don't know his challenge, so we're going to leave that blank, but we're going to come back to that as we build. So now we're actually going to build some of his skills. So we're going to get that going there. So one thing I always recommend doing is first looking at that species, like I said. We're going to bring over some of the ones we think are going to fit. Crude weapon specialist. I think that's kind of cool. So if a bounty hunter ever loses his weapon and he's trapped somewhere and he needs to have an hour and build something new, he can do that. So I think that's a fun one to include on there and really kind of reflects that species. So we're going to drop that in there. So let's get that in there. So basically one thing too as you're going through this and adding new things. So whatever you see, I'm going to hit enter real quick just so you see what happens. If you don't put anything in there, it's going to divide the block. To keep the block all in one, you just hit the little kind of got the name of that, but pretty much that symbol in there, and then you put it in and it keeps the block together. So we're going to hit enter again, put that in, and it gives us some space. So we're going to put in crude weapon specialist. So now we still have to format it though. So we're going to put these asterisks on both sides of this, and what this is going to do is it's going to bold the kind of the keywords in this block, so it stands out and kind of matches that 5e formatting. We also are going to change a few things too. So if you take from like the species or page, or from like if you wanted to use a specific class feature for a monster, it's always going to have it in that third person, or it's going to be referencing you versus the third person. So we're going to change that to it. It's been 1 hour, which do over the course of a short rest, crafting weapons out of loose materials. It can craft any simple kinetic weapon, but the damage is going to suffer a -1 period penalties. So we've got that crude weapon specialist in there. Now we reflect that. I think that's kind of a cool feature for him to have. I'm going to take another look at Ewoks to see if there's anything else we want to bring in there. There's two things that we're going to take over from this too. So we're going to do Keen Smell. He's the bounty hunter. We're going to want him to have advantage on searching, especially for things like smell. So we're going to put that in there. Oh, another piece too. So whenever you're doing something in the system, you always want to make sure that you have another one of those symbols in between your next paragraph or your next item, because that makes sure. So I'll show you how it'll look if we don't do that. So you're going to see, let me bring this down a little bit on the screen just so you guys can see a little better. So if we didn't do that, take a look on this right hand screen. You're going to see it's going to put that all in that same paragraph. We don't want it to be in the same paragraph, so if we go down to this bottom one, throw it in there, we've got it in there. So we're going to do the same thing that we did for the other one. And make sure to kind of check the verbiage too. So we're going to check, say the Ewok has advantage versus have. But yeah, no, we've got that in there. Now, one thing I always recommend doing, and so I did this a little bit ahead of time for this project, take a look at other blocks or things you want your monster to have. So there's a couple things I'm going to bring over for this block that I want them to have, because one of the big things, especially if you're going to be submitting it for like Scum and Villainy or into the SW5E server, you want to make sure you're following the same formatting and writing style that you use for these other features. So what I like to do is I go in and see if there's a feature I want, copy and paste it, and then just rework it to make sure it's fitting the block that I'm using. So one thing I want him to have, and so this, I kind of like to do these in alphabetical order as well. So let's get that fixed in. So I'm gonna actually put that in. So, but we're gonna give him evasion. So he's a monk type, so we're gonna give him that just so he knows. He's able to kind of dodge out of any explosions or things like that. I give a little bit of advantage on working with that. So I've already worked on this one. So evasion, you'll see if the Ewok is subject to effect, it allows it to make a dexterity saving throw. If it succeeds, half. If it fails, half the damage. If it succeeds, no damage. So just kind of a good feature. I recommend it for a lot of monster blocks. It just gives you a little bit of a extra ability to get out of the way if you need to. If your monster's getting spammed by explosions or any of the other things that players are likely to do to it. So one of my favorites. We're also going to give him cunning action. So that's going to let him make a little bit, so give him a little bit more maneuverability, allow him to disengage and get away. One thing you'll notice if you DM or even if you just play, players love to dogpile one of your monsters. So if you give him some more maneuverability, the ability to disengage and kind of maneuver around the battlefield, it's going to let him stay around a lot longer than he would otherwise. So perfect out there. So I think those are the big ones. Let me make sure there's nothing else I want to bring over for that. Oh, another one too, especially since this is going to be for a higher level party. I'm going to give him enhanced strikes. Basically, what that's going to do is allow him to bypass resistance for his attacks, just in case you have somebody that's got some enhanced armor or abilities that are making it a little harder to hit. This time, I'll make sure your monster's actually doing what he's supposed to. So perfect, we've got that in there. And then I'm going to do one thing too, because it looks like when I copied that over, it didn't bring over that additional line. So we're going to put in this line to make this a wide block. Perfect, so we've got that going there. So we've got pretty much, I think this is kind of a good reflection of the skills you'd want for your Ewok bounty hunter. They got the crude weapon specialist, cunning action, evasion, enhanced strikes, a keen smell. So they should do pretty well with being able to hunt down any of your party members. Oh, one other thing too, I almost forgot that. So Ewoks can be pretty stealthy, especially if they're in a natural environment. So we want to bring over that Mask of the Wild too, and then also include in their climbing feat too, because these guys are good climbers. So I'm going to correct that verbiage. Perfect. Now we've got that in there, so we've got that all through. So now we're actually going to get to the fun section. We're going to start making attacks and damage for it. So we're going to definitely keep the multi-attack, and then we're going to say the Ewok can make two attacks, two weapon attacks, and two unarmed attacks per turn. So that just gives him some good options on that side. So he's could be a higher level party, so we're gonna make sure he can do some good damage. And then since I'm using it as a little bit of a monk build, I kind of went off the monks for inspiration for it too. So we're gonna bring over a couple that I've already kind of pre-formatted in there, just so we don't have to spend too much time on getting that in. So as I mentioned earlier, this guy I want him to use kind of an improvised vibro spear. I think it'd be cool for them to use that, and that's what I built in. So we're gonna bring that over first. And we're going to touch on a few core components and formatting components once I have that in there. Perfect. So we've got an improvised vibro spear in there. Let me scroll down just a little bit so you guys can see that just a bit better too. So let me get that going. So you'll see with the improvised vibro spear, uh, basically the key things with the style you want to include on there is right now we haven't figured out what we want to hit. So we've got that plus, and it'll be something to hit. It's going to be a reach 5 foot, one creature. Then you want that hit italicized, and then what type of damage it's going to do. And in that parentheses, we're going to have our damage in there once we kind of get to that section. And then the target must, and I'm going to give him one of the things I wanted to include in this too. If you read up on the Ewoks, one of the big things they use is poison. So I'm giving him some poison damage too. So we're going to give him a little bit of poison on that side, just to really reflect what they can do for that. And just make sure that we got a fun build for them. So right now we're going to actually put in a few of those damage pieces. So I've already got this pulled up. So Vibro, it's going to be a Vibro Spear. So that's going to be, we're going to do it, keep it versatile. He's going to say he's wielding with both hands. So that's 1d8. So back to there, and always take a look at the weapons too. You want to make sure you're following the same formats that are created for it. So we're going to do 1d8 plus and since he's a monk, Vibro Spears are a monk weapon. We're going to be able to use his dexterity for it versus strength, which would usually be, so it's going to be +6. But this is an improvised weapon, so we're going to give him that -1, 2 to reflect that. So we do the average of that. So the 1d8's average is 4, plus a 6. So that'd be 10 minus 1, so that'd be 9 for just this damage on there. And then right now we have to still figure out what our DC is going to be since we haven't figured out our proficiency bonus. That's going to sub off his wisdom, but we're going to have him take some poison damage too. So this is going to be a higher level one. So right now let's do, and we could definitely touch this up because we're going to go to the CR calculator just a bit later. We're going to do 3d8 for it. And 3d8 would be 12 damage. And we most likely will be upping that a little bit. Actually, let's up that now because it's going to be at least a CR10. So let's make that 5d8, and that is going to be 20 damage on that side. So it gives them a little bit of more of a kick on that, and we may have to kind of play with it a bit once we get through. But we just wanted to make sure we've got that reflected up front. And then we're going to throw in a couple of other things too. I'm going to give him unarmed strike as well. He's a monk. And then I'm also going to give him a light bow. So let's throw those in there too. So you see, you got the unarmed strike. It's a melee weapon. attack. So same thing there. We're going to kind of go back and throw those in. So we're going to do, just to make it easy, we're going to keep this 1d8 as well. We're going to put 1d8 plus 6. It's dexterity. Uh, and we're going to allow him to make the following effects, if he likes to, for the creature afterwards. So he can either make him a strength saving throw or make him drop one item that the creature is holding. Ewok's choice. Dexterity saving throw or be knocked prone. Constitution saving throw or be stunned. So just give him some of that kind of cool monk flavor with it too that you can use for your monster. And you'll also see we've included the light bow down there below. So we're going to bring that light bow stats over. So we're going to go right back to that weapons area. Put in light bow. This is a 2d6 weapon, so we're going to include that in there too. So that's 2d6 plus 6. That would be 12 damage for it. And that we're just going to keep pretty simple. That's just giving a range op, and I always recommend this system to give your monster some type of range option, because if you don't, the party will just wail on them from far away. So we've got most of the key things in this system right now. So what we're going to do, and let's take kind of a quick, oh, and I almost forgot to put a little blurb there. Perfect. Now we've got that all in the block. So in second, we'll zoom out so you can get a full look at this. But what we're going to do beforehand is we're going to throw a couple of things into the system. So one of the things I recommend doing is using a CR calculator when building a monster. I use this one, CR calculator. I'm going to include the link in our YouTube section there, so definitely take a look down there and we'll be able to reference the site, because this is the best way to find quickly what your CR is. You can do it old school style, paper using the DMG. I don't like to do that. It takes too much time, in my opinion. This way is a lot easier. So we're going to, so with this, he's doing a monk build, so we gave him plus 6 mod for dexterity, plus 4 for wisdom, so that'd be a 10, plus the 10 base for AC, so he's going to have a 20 AC. As I said, I want him to be around 10 or 11, so I'm going to take a look at their HP totals there. One thing too to note, HP and attack damage are weighted pretty heavily, so you don't always want to go on the high end for those. So I'm gonna give him, let's say 130 to start right now. Actually, and I'm gonna put one thing too for this system if you use it. Uh, Always put Constitution in there because it'll change whatever you put in. As you see, it went up from 1 to 7, so I'm gonna put him at 130 right now. But we've got that Constitution in there. And then damage per round. So let's go calculate what we put in there so far. So right now we've got him. If he's, and you always want to use the damage with the highest attack. So the light bow is not going to be his highest. We're going to use the 2 vibro spear attacks. So and you assume he hits with both. So if you hit with this, we're going to take that average 9. Take the average of the poison 29. And then we're going to add in if he hits with both of his unarmed strikes. And no, I didn't put that in there. And that would be 10 damage. So 29 from our improvised vibro spear, 10 damage each from the unarmed strikes. He makes 2, so that'd be 49 damage he'd be able to do in a round. So let's include that in there. And I said we're probably going to have to up the damage a little bit, but we'll see kind of how it plays out initially. And he is going to have a DC save, so we're going to include that in there. I'm shooting for 10, so we're going to put it at 16 for right now and kind of see how it shakes up. We may have to go back and tweak that in there. Now the vulnerabilities and resistance and immunities. He doesn't have any damage resistance or vulnerability, so we're going to leave that blank. He does have 3 to 4 save resistance or proficiencies, so we're going to include that in there. Can't fly, so we don't have to worry about that. We're also going to include in, he's got evasion, which is pretty much avoidance, so let's include that in there. We're going to, and one of the hard things with this one is it doesn't have every feature, so sometimes you've got to just kind of do a gut feeling. Usually it's if they don't include it on there, and then I've got a couple of features that aren't listed in this. I usually just bump the CR up by 1 just to reflect those features that aren't listed. So let's see if there's anything else in there that we'd want. So we've got nimble escape because cunning action allows them to do that. Disengage hide also gives them dash. So we're gonna put that in there and then take a quick look to see. We've got so nothing else I think is on there. Perfect. So let's take a look back up there and see what we're at. There's a couple features that aren't listed, so we have to reflect that with the CR. Yeah, so right now we're at about CR 9. So this is pretty near where I wanted it. So, 'cause especially with those two features not listed, as I said, I like to bump those up by one if I don't have all my features in there. So this would be a CR 10. So I like where the HP's at. I like that AC. Why does it says 27 AC? That's a perfect. Yeah, so that's golden there. And that's one of the things to do with the effective AC. If you have things like evasion, it gives them a little bit of a boost to it. So perfect there. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy over that HP since it's got the hit die reflected in there, and I hate calculating that out. So we're going to go back in, throw that up there. Oops, that's our armor class. We're going to change the AC to 20, and we're just going to call that unarmored defense. Keep speed the same. We're going to go back here, and one of the big things we needed from our CR calculation is that proficiency bonus. So they've got a +4 for this, as well as 5,900 XP. We're going to do an encounter builder podcast later, and they're going to touch on the XP and kind of the importance to it. If you're DMing any system, it's hugely important, but I think it gets overlooked a lot. So we'll touch on that later. So we're going to say 10 parentheses 5,900 XP for this. Then we're going to start throwing in our stuff. So he's got a +6 Dex, +4 proficiency, so he's got a 10 saving throw on Dex. +2 Con, +4, 6. Wisdom, +4, so 8. And I got a period in there. And then turn that to a thing, and then that one doesn't need one. So acrobatics, we're going to give him just proficiency in it, so that's going to be a +10. Nature, we're just going to give him proficiency as well. So he's got that -1, so he's going to have a +3 for nature. So he's not going to be super nature oriented, but he's going to have a little bit for it. I'm giving him expertise and perception. He's a bounty hunter. He's going to be on the lookout, so that's going to be 4 times 2, so 8 plus the wisdom mod, so 4, so 12 perception. Sleight of hand, just something that he's going to be able to do, so +10 there. Survival, he's a bounty hunter. Survival is usually the big tracking stat, so we're going to give him expertise in that one too. So that's going to be +12 as well, since that goes off wisdom too. Perfect. So we've got that all in there. And now we're going to go down and look at everything that would need that proficiency mod in there. So let's take a look. So these ones don't really need it, so we can keep those all good. So now we got to the first thing that needs it, our improvised vibro spear. This is a dexterity weapon, so we're going to add that 4 to the 6, so he gets +10 to hit. And then unarmed strike, same thing, +10 to hit. Light bow, same thing, +10, since all those are going to be scaling off dex. Makes it easy. Now we got to go back and do our DCs. So that DC for Constitution, we're going to sub that off of his Wisdom. So that was a +4, then +4 from the proficiency bonus. So that would be 8 plus the and +8 just from traditional 5e, where you may add that to the save. So that's going to be +16, right where we wanted it. And then where there's another one too, so DC 16 here. And then you see each one has a different save. So this one's Strength, Dexterity, Constitution. You use that 16 for each of them, but they have a different stat depending on what you want to do with it. And then I think that's everything. So what we're going to do is I like to click it over to print screen. and it's going to save for us too. And I should have saved it before clicking print screen. So one thing with GeoBinder is it sometimes loses work you do. So don't do like I did. Save it before you do this, because I've clicked print screen before and I've lost everything. So luckily it saved for us. We didn't lose anything, but don't follow my lead on that one. Click save before you do it. But now you see we've got it in there. So we've got Ewok Bounty Hunter, small humanoid, Ewok, chaotic balanced, that 20 unarmored defense. And now with unarmored defense, you can, and if I was putting this block into like if I was submitting it to the server, I would have put unarmored defense in this description over here. Didn't want, I wanted to kind of keep it a little quicker, so we're not going to put that in there. But you'll see all of its saving throws, its skills, condition immunities. Oh, and see, and this is why I always do the review. We're going to go back and put that passive perception in there. So it'll be 12 plus 10, so 22, and we'll put that in just a second. But you see, uh, everything's in there. You just kind of take a quick look just to make sure it's all right. Everything you've wanted is in there. Uh, and then you kind of go through, and everything's looking good so far. And then I think we've got a monster. So let me go back and put that passive perception in there. So that's gonna be 22, and we've got our monster. So we go back there. So this is a little bit longer than I wanted to, but a take on how to make a monster using GM Binder and the SW5E system. I'm gonna have hopefully make a series out of this. There's a couple more monsters I want to make for my campaign, so definitely something that I want to take a look at and just really show, because everybody gets a little bit nervous when using GM Binder and making their own monsters, but really it's been one of my favorite things with working with SW5E, is getting the chance to make monsters to use for both my games and for other people's tables too. So this is going to be hopefully a continuing series. If you have any suggestions for a monster you want to build, put that in the YouTube comments. But definitely like and hopefully subscribe to both our YouTube channel and our podcast channel. Every Tuesday we come up with a new podcast. Right now we've got kind of the intro to SW5E and what's different, and twin weapon fighting up there. So definitely check that out at our DungeonJediMasters.com website. And we're going to be kind of continuing to put out content. So if there's suggestions or things you want, let us know, and we'll definitely address that. But thank you guys for joining me for going over the monster build section, and you guys have made your first steps into a wider world. So definitely keep going at it, and if any way I can help, let me know. But may the force be with you.